The pharaohs of ancient Egypt were not merely kings or rulers. They were viewed as living gods, divinely appointed to govern the land and maintain Ma'at, the sacred cosmic order. To the people of Egypt, the pharaoh was not just a political leader, but the intermediary between the divine and earthly realms, the person through whom the will of the gods was made manifest on earth. This idea of divine kingship was at the heart of the pharaoh's power and prestige, but it also imbued him with a profound responsibility to maintain balance and harmony within the universe. The concept of Ma'at, cosmic order and balance. In ancient Egyptian belief, Ma'at was not simply a moral or social concept, it was the fundamental cosmic principle that governed all of existence. Ma'at represented truth, justice, and order, but it also encompassed the balance and harmony of the universe, from the movement of the stars to the cycles of the seasons, and even the behavior of the Nile River. The pharaoh was the earthly embodiment of Ma'at, responsible for upholding this divine balance both in society and in the cosmos. Every aspect of the pharaoh's rule was tied to this concept. The agriculture, the flooding of the Nile, the health of the people, and even the fate of the kingdom depended on the pharaoh's ability to maintain Ma'at. In this sense, the pharaoh's authority was not just temporal, but cosmic, and his actions were believed to directly influence the flow of divine order throughout the world. The pharaoh's duty to maintain balance extended beyond the physical realm. It was deeply spiritual. He had to ensure that the gods were honored, the people were just, and the natural world was in harmony. Failure to do so could invite the forces of chaos, represented by the serpent Apep, leading to spiritual and material destruction. This was why the pharaoh's role was considered so sacred as the embodiment of Ma'at. He had to align himself with the divine forces and act as a channel for the flow of cosmic energy. The pharaoh's role as the living god Horus. In Egyptian tradition, the pharaoh was often identified with Horus, the falcon-headed god of kingship and the sky. Horus represented divine kingship and the protection of the state, and every pharaoh, upon ascending to the throne, was seen as the earthly incarnation of Horus. The pharaoh was not merely a ruler. He was considered the living representative of the god on earth, embodying both the physical power of the kingdom and the divine authority of the heavens. This divine kingship was reinforced through rituals and ceremonies. The pharaoh's coronation involved a series of sacred rites that symbolized his union with Horus and his divine authority. In many ways, the pharaoh was seen as a bridge between the human and divine realms. He was not only responsible for the governance of Egypt, but also for ensuring the well-being of the gods by maintaining the proper balance of offerings and worship. The pharaoh's connection to the gods was also symbolized through his divine birthright. The belief in divine parentage was deeply ingrained in Egyptian society, and the pharaoh was often considered to be the son of the god Amun-Ra, the king of the gods. As such, the pharaoh's divine nature was seen as the direct link between the gods and the people of Egypt. This was not a mere political title. It was a spiritual truth that bound the pharaoh to the divine order and gave him unparalleled power and authority. The pharaoh and the gods, intermediaries between heaven and earth. The pharaoh's role as an intermediary between the gods and humanity is crucial in understanding his divine authority. While the gods were distant and omnipotent, the pharaoh was the one through whom divine will was expressed on earth. He communicated with the gods through rituals, sacrifices, and prayers, ensuring that the gods were kept in favor of the kingdom. This included overseeing grand religious festivals and building temples in honor of the gods, as well as consulting with priests and oracles to receive divine guidance. The pharaoh was also seen as the defender of Egypt's divine order, protecting it from the forces of chaos represented by the serpent god Apep, and ensuring that Egypt's future prosperity and survival were secured through divine favor. The pharaoh's role was symbolic of the divine forces at work in the universe, and his spiritual responsibility was just as important as his physical rule. In many ways, the pharaoh's connection with the gods was part of the Egyptian understanding of the universe's spiritual hierarchy. The pharaoh was the highest of the earthly rulers, but he still existed under the domain of the gods, who were the ultimate rulers of the cosmos. The pharaoh's power, then, was seen as something granted by the gods not to be abused, but to be used in service of divine will. Ancient Egypt was a civilization steeped in mystical knowledge and spiritual practices that reached far beyond what we typically consider practical or mundane. The Egyptians believed that the universe was governed by divine principles, and they sought to understand these laws through sacred knowledge that connected them with the cosmos, the gods, and the very fabric of existence. This knowledge was not widely shared among the general populace, but was instead closely guarded by the priesthood and the pharaohs, who were seen as the stewards of these ancient mysteries, sacred geometry, and the divine blueprint. One of the most important aspects of ancient Egyptian wisdom was their understanding of sacred geometry, which they believed was the divine blueprint of the universe. The Egyptians saw geometry as a tool to understand the underlying order of the cosmos, from the precise dimensions of the pyramids to the alignment of temples and sacred monuments. Sacred geometry was not simply a mathematical concept for the Egyptians. It was a spiritual tool that allowed them to access the deeper truths of creation. The most famous example of sacred geometry in Egypt is the Great Pyramid of Giza, whose proportions are said to align perfectly with the cosmic measurements of the earth and the heavens. The pyramid's angle, for instance, is believed to represent the angle of the Earth's tilt, while its position on the Earth's latitude is said to correspond to the location of the stars. The Egyptians understood that the universe itself operated according to sacred principles, and they used geometry to express these principles in their architecture, rituals, and daily life. The golden ratio, phi 1.618, is another sacred proportion that is believed to have been known to the Egyptians and encoded in their sacred structures. This ratio, found in nature, is a key component of divine harmony, symbolizing the perfect balance between the physical and spiritual realms. The Egyptians understood the importance of balance and harmony in all aspects of life, and sacred geometry served as a means to align themselves with these cosmic principles. The mystical power of the temples. Temples were not merely places of worship in ancient Egypt. They were seen as gateways to the divine, places where the physical and spiritual worlds intersected. The Egyptians believed that the gods inhabited the temples, and the pharaoh, as their earthly representative, was responsible for maintaining these sacred spaces and ensuring the proper rituals were performed to keep the divine forces in balance. The temples were designed with careful attention to astronomical alignment and sacred geometry, with the entrance often facing the rising or setting sun, signifying the union of heaven and earth. The positioning of the pillars, the rooms, and even the floors of the temples followed specific measurements that aligned with the cosmic principles the Egyptians believed in. Every aspect of the temple's design, from its dimensions to the placement of its statues and symbols, was a reflection of the spiritual truths of the universe. For the initiates, the temple was not just a place of prayer, but a school of sacred knowledge, where they could learn the ancient mysteries of the cosmos and the gods. Only the priests and those deemed worthy were allowed to enter the inner sanctum of the temple, where the most sacred rituals took place and where the secrets of the afterlife were revealed. The power of symbols and rituals. The Egyptians had a deep understanding of the power of symbols. They believed that symbols were not merely representations of physical things, but that they carried deep spiritual significance and had the power to influence the physical world. The most powerful symbols in ancient Egypt were those associated with the gods and the afterlife, such as the Ankh, symbol of life, the Eye of Horus, symbol of protection, and the scarab, symbol of regeneration and transformation. In addition to these symbols, the Egyptians also practiced elaborate rituals that were designed to align the spiritual and material worlds. These rituals, performed by the priests and overseen by the pharaoh, were seen as a way to maintain the balance between Ma'at, order, and Isfet, chaos. Rituals involved offerings, prayers, and the recitation of sacred texts that invoked the power of the gods, and ensured that the divine forces continued to protect Egypt and its people. The Great Pyramids of Giza, the most iconic symbols of ancient Egypt, have stood for thousands of years as monuments to the wisdom, power, and spiritual knowledge of the pharaohs. These colossal structures, built with precise geometric proportions and mystical significance, have long been considered not just tombs for the pharaohs, but cosmic machines or spiritual devices that resonate with the divine energies of the universe. The secrets embedded in their design suggest that they were more than just architectural feats. They were the physical embodiment of esoteric knowledge that could unlock the hidden forces of the cosmos. The pyramids as cosmic structures. The ancient Egyptians believed that the Great Pyramid was a direct representation of the cosmic order, a sacred structure designed to align with the stars, the sun, and the forces of nature. The pyramid's dimensions and proportions are believed to reflect the very principles of creation and the divine mathematics that govern the universe. One of the most remarkable features of the Great Pyramid is its alignment with the stars, particularly the star Sirius, which was associated with the goddess Isis and was believed to be the source of cosmic knowledge and divine power. The pyramid's position on the Earth's latitude and its exact alignment with the cardinal directions suggest that it was built to channel cosmic energy, bringing the power of the heavens down to Earth. The internal chambers of the pyramid, as well as the corridors and shafts, are carefully aligned to reflect the movement of the stars, particularly Orion, associated with the god Osiris, the god of the afterlife. These alignments were not purely astronomical. They were believed to represent the spiritual journey of the pharaoh, guiding his soul toward immortality and divine ascension. The structure of the pyramid, with its precise geometry, served as a spiritual gateway, linking the physical realm with the divine. The pyramids as energy conduits. The idea that the pyramids were not just tombs, but also spiritual devices designed to channel and amplify cosmic energy has been explored by many researchers and theorists. Some believe that the pyramids were built to harness the Earth's energy grid, known as the ley lines, and focus this energy to produce spiritual awakening or divine connection. The Great Pyramid, in particular, is thought to have functioned as an energy machine, possibly a capacitor or a resonance chamber that could amplify the spiritual power of the pharaoh. The materials used in the pyramid's construction, including limestone and granite, are known to have unique properties that could potentially interact with electromagnetic fields or sound frequencies. The king's chamber within the Great Pyramid, for example, is built with specific proportions that could create a resonance effect, amplifying sound waves or vibrations that could have spiritual significance. Some researchers suggest that the pyramid's role as energy conductors might explain the strange phenomena and mysterious experiences that have been reported by those who visit the pyramids. The pyramid's spiritual significance, a pathway to the afterlife. The Great Pyramid was not simply a physical monument, it was a spiritual tool designed to guide the pharaoh's soul to the afterlife. The Egyptians believed in the concept of the eternal soul, which was thought to journey to the other side after death. The pyramid, with its precise alignments, served as a spiritual vehicle for the pharaoh's soul, providing a pathway to divinity and immortality. The internal chambers of the pyramid were aligned with the heavens, and the pyramid structure itself mirrored the journey of the soul. The ascending passageway represented the pharaoh's ascent to the divine realm, while the king's chamber was considered the place of divine union, where the pharaoh could merge with the gods and achieve eternal life. This journey through the pyramid was symbolic of the spiritual path that each individual was believed to undertake after death. The pyramid was a physical manifestation of the mystical path to divine knowledge and eternal life, guiding the soul through its transition to the afterlife. The Egyptian priesthood was a powerful and influential institution, responsible not only for the spiritual well-being of the people, but also for guarding and transmitting the esoteric wisdom of the gods. Priests in ancient Egypt were the stewards of the mystical teachings passed down from the gods themselves, teachings that were often shrouded in secrecy and only accessible to those who were deemed worthy. The priesthood's role extended far beyond that of religious leaders. They were the keepers of hidden knowledge, guiding the pharaoh and the people in matters of the spirit, the afterlife, and the laws of the cosmos. The role of the priesthood, guardians of sacred knowledge. The priests of ancient Egypt held a unique and sacred role within the society. They were believed to be the direct intermediaries between the gods and humanity, responsible for maintaining the cosmic order, or ma'at, on earth. Priests performed regular rituals, sacrifices, and offerings to the gods to ensure that the divine forces were pleased and that the land remained prosperous and in harmony with the universe. Their work was not just a form of worship, but a spiritual science aimed at maintaining balance between the divine and the earthly realms. The priesthood, particularly the high-ranking priests, were also the custodians of ancient texts, such as the pyramid texts, the coffin texts, and the Egyptian Book of the Dead. These texts were filled with esoteric knowledge detailing the secrets of the universe, the nature of the soul, and the journey to the afterlife. The priests alone had access to these sacred writings, and they were responsible for interpreting and transmitting their wisdom to the pharaoh and select initiates. Beyond the rituals and ceremonies, the priests also served as the spiritual educators of the Egyptian people. They provided spiritual guidance to the pharaoh, the nobility, and the general population, helping them navigate the challenges of life, death, and the afterlife. They were also the philosophers of their time, engaging in deep intellectual and mystical inquiry to understand the nature of existence and the divine. Initiation into the mysteries, the path of the adept. One of the most important roles of the priesthood was to oversee the process of initiation into the mysteries. Initiates who sought to gain access to the hidden knowledge of the gods underwent a series of rituals and spiritual tests that would lead them to a higher understanding of the universe and their place within it. These initiations were often carried out in the temples, which were seen as centers of spiritual awakening and divine revelation. The process of initiation was intense and transformative. Initiates were required to purify themselves, both physically and spiritually, in order to prepare for the divine knowledge that would be revealed to them. The initiation process was not just about acquiring knowledge, but about achieving spiritual transformation, aligning the initiate with the divine forces that govern the universe. Through these sacred rites, the initiate would be guided to a deeper understanding of Ma'at, the cosmic order, and their own divine nature. The priests would lead initiates through a series of rituals, mystical exercises, and spiritual tests, many of which involved astronomical and geometric teachings. These rites were designed to open the initiate's mind and heart to the deeper truths of the universe, allowing them to access the divine wisdom of the gods. It was through these initiations that the secrets of sacred geometry, alchemy, and cosmic energy were passed down from one generation to the next. The rites of the dead, preparing the soul for immortality. One of the key aspects of the Egyptian priesthood's role was the preparation of the soul for the afterlife. The Egyptians believed in the concept of immortality, and the pharaohs in particular sought to ensure their eternal existence by undergoing elaborate burial rituals and spiritual initiations. The priesthood played a vital role in guiding the pharaohs through these rites, ensuring that their souls would successfully navigate the challenges of the afterlife and achieve eternal life with the gods. The Egyptian Book of the Dead, a collection of spells and prayers, was used by the priests to guide the deceased through the underworld, a journey that was fraught with trials and judgment. The priests would recite the spells from the Book of the Dead, invoking the power of the gods and helping the deceased navigate the treacherous underworld and achieve immortality. The ancient Egyptians had a profound understanding of the soul, its journey, and its relationship with the afterlife. Unlike many other ancient civilizations, Egypt placed a tremendous emphasis on the immortality of the pharaohs, believing that their souls would transcend death and live forever among the gods. This belief was not limited to the pharaohs alone. It extended to the entire Egyptian people, who believed that by following certain rituals, they too could achieve eternal life. However, the pharaohs were seen as the divine rulers, and their journey to immortality was far more elaborate and significant than that of anyone else in Egyptian society. The pharaoh's divine soul and its journey. The pharaoh's soul was considered to be divine, as he was believed to be the earthly embodiment of Horus, the sky god, and the protector of Egypt. Upon his death, the pharaoh's soul was expected to travel through various stages of the afterlife, ultimately achieving union with the gods. This journey was fraught with challenges, but the pharaoh was guaranteed divine guidance and protection as he traversed the realms of the underworld, known as the Duat. The Egyptian afterlife was not seen as a place of eternal rest, but as a continuation of the pharaoh's role as ruler, now in the spiritual realm. He would continue to govern the land of the dead, maintaining Ma'at, the cosmic order, and ensuring the balance of the universe. The soul of the pharaoh was believed to ascend through several stages of transformation, from the judgment of his deeds in life to eventual rebirth and immortality. He was to be judged by the gods, and his heart was weighed against the feather of Ma'at, symbolizing truth and justice. If the pharaoh was deemed worthy, he would be allowed to enter the field of reeds, the Egyptian paradise, where he would live eternally in a state of divine bliss. However, if the pharaoh's soul was found wanting, it would be devoured by the demon Ammit, and he would be condemned to eternal death. The journey to immortality was not automatic. It required both divine approval and the proper rites to be followed. The role of the Book of the Dead. The Egyptian Book of the Dead was a guidebook to the afterlife, filled with spells, prayers, and instructions for navigating the journey of the soul. This sacred text was written on papyrus scrolls and placed in the tombs of the deceased to ensure that they would have the necessary knowledge to pass through the underworld and reach the afterlife. The pharaoh's tomb would contain the most elaborate and detailed version of the Book of the Dead, as he was the most important soul to be guided to the afterlife. The spells contained in the Book of the Dead were designed to assist the deceased in overcoming the trials of the Duat, including the judgment of the heart, the encounters with dangerous gods, and the confession of sins. The pharaoh was thought to possess the most power and the greatest connection to the gods, so his Book of the Dead was a tool to ensure that he would continue his divine rule in the afterlife. The spiritual rites described in the text were not merely symbolic, but served as essential steps in achieving eternal life. The pharaoh's heart, soul, and body had to be carefully prepared to ensure a safe passage to the divine realm. Each spell, each prayer, was part of a larger spiritual ritual designed to lead the pharaoh into eternal divine oneness. The mummification process, preserving the body for immortality. Central to the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife was the process of mummification, which ensured that his body would be preserved for eternity. The body was seen as a vessel for the soul, and it had to remain intact for the soul to return to it after its journey through the afterlife. The mummification process was incredibly detailed and took several weeks, involving the removal of internal organs, the drying and embalming of the body, and the wrapping of the body in linen bandages. The organs were placed in canopic jars to be protected and preserved for the pharaoh's return. The mummification ritual was performed by a group of skilled priests who had mastered the knowledge of alchemy, spiritual purification, and ritual magic. They believed that the proper embalming process allowed the pharaoh's Ka, life force, and Ba, spirit, to return to the body and reunite in the afterlife. Without this proper preservation, the soul would not be able to return and would be lost forever. The mummification process was not only a physical act but a spiritual one. The rituals involved in the embalming of the pharaoh were seen as acts of divine transformation, allowing the pharaoh's soul to ascend to the next level of existence. The mummified body would serve as the vehicle through which the pharaoh would maintain his divine rulership over both the physical and spiritual realms. The ancient wisdom of Egypt has not remained confined within the borders of the Nile Valley. It has spread far and wide, influencing the spiritual traditions, philosophies, and occult knowledge of many civilizations. From the early Greeks and Romans to the later development of Freemasonry and Western esotericism, the mystical teachings of the pharaohs left an indelible mark on world history. These teachings, centered around sacred geometry, spiritual awakening, and the mastery of cosmic forces, have transcended time, continuing to inspire seekers of divine knowledge across centuries. The Egyptian influence on Greek philosophy. One of the most significant ways in which Egyptian esoteric wisdom impacted other cultures was through its influence on Greek philosophy. The Greeks, particularly philosophers like Plato and Pythagoras, traveled to Egypt to study at the temples and absorb the deep mystical knowledge of the ancient Egyptians. They were introduced to the Egyptian system of sacred mathematics, geometry, and the concept of the soul, all of which became integral to their philosophical systems. Plato, for example, was greatly influenced by Egyptian teachings on the immortal soul and the afterlife. In his writings, particularly in the Phaedo and Timaeus, Plato discusses the idea of the soul's immortality and its journey through various realms of existence, concepts that closely parallel Egyptian beliefs. Plato's concept of the world of forms, the idea that the physical world is just a shadow of a higher, more perfect reality, mirrors the Egyptian understanding of the material world as a reflection of the divine order. Similarly, Pythagoras, the famous mathematician and mystic, is said to have studied in Egypt, where he was introduced to the concept of sacred geometry and the mystical properties of numbers. The Egyptian emphasis on the divine nature of mathematical proportions and geometric shapes deeply influenced Pythagoras' development of his famous mathematical theorems and his belief in the spiritual power of numbers. The Roman adaptation of Egyptian mysticism. As the Roman Empire expanded, it absorbed many of the cultural and spiritual elements of the civilizations it conquered, including Egypt. The mystical teachings of Egypt were deeply intertwined with Roman practices, particularly in the areas of ritual magic, astrology, and the worship of gods. The Romans were fascinated by Egyptian deities such as Isis and Osiris, and these gods were incorporated into Roman religion, often taking on new forms and interpretations. The Egyptian mystery cults became popular in Rome, with many Roman elites joining the cult of Isis, believing that her mystical teachings offered the promise of eternal life and divine favor. These cults were often centered around secret rites and initiations that had their roots in the ancient Egyptian esoteric practices. The Romans saw the Egyptian gods as powerful forces that governed the cosmic order, and they adopted many of the rituals and spiritual practices that were believed to align them with the divine. The Romans were also influenced by Egyptian astrology, a system that was used to track the movements of the stars and planets and to interpret their influence on human life. Egyptian astrology became an important part of Roman spiritual life, particularly among the elite, who used it to guide their decisions and actions. Egyptian mysticism and Western esotericism. The influence of Egyptian mysticism did not fade with the fall of the Roman Empire. In fact, it played a central role in the development of Western esotericism and occult traditions in the medieval and modern periods. The Renaissance, in particular, saw a renewed interest in Egyptian wisdom as scholars, philosophers, and mystics sought to revive the ancient teachings of the pharaohs. One of the most significant movements to arise during the Renaissance was the Hermeticism revival, which was deeply influenced by ancient Egyptian philosophy and mystical practices. The Hermetic corpus, a collection of writings attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, is a fusion of Egyptian spiritual teachings and Greek philosophy. The Hermetic tradition emphasized the knowledge of the divine, the soul's immortality, and the mastery of cosmic laws, all ideas that were central to the Egyptian worldview. The influence of Hermeticism spread through alchemy, astrology, and mystical practices, laying the foundation for the Western occult tradition. Egyptian symbolism, such as the Eye of Horus and the Ankh, became central in occult rituals, representing divine wisdom, life, and protection. Despite the passage of millennia, the legacy of the pharaohs continues to captivate humanity, inspiring a modern-day quest for the hidden wisdom of ancient Egypt. As scholars, archaeologists, and spiritual seekers uncover more about the mysterious monuments, rituals, and sacred texts of Egypt, it becomes increasingly clear that the pharaohs held knowledge far beyond what is generally understood by contemporary society. This esoteric wisdom was carefully guarded, passed down through the priesthood, and often concealed within the architecture, symbols, and even the mystical geometry embedded in the very stones of the ancient Egyptian structures. The continued search for ancient knowledge. The search for the lost knowledge of the pharaohs has become a central focus for modern archaeologists and spiritual seekers. Whether it is the quest for hidden chambers in the Great Pyramid or the search for the tombs of unknown pharaohs, researchers are constantly uncovering new pieces of the puzzle. In recent years, advances in technology have allowed archaeologists to use non-invasive techniques such as ground-penetrating radar and 3D imaging to explore previously inaccessible parts of the pyramids and temples. One of the most exciting developments in the search for Egypt's hidden wisdom came in 2017 when a team of archaeologists discovered a hidden chamber inside the Great Pyramid. While the true purpose of the chamber is still unknown, its discovery reignited interest in the mystical and energetic properties of the pyramids. Many believe that there are still secrets buried beneath the sand, waiting to be uncovered by those who are ready to unlock the mysteries of the past. The mystery of the lost tombs. Despite the extensive exploration of Egypt's pyramids and tombs, there are still many that remain undiscovered. Some believe that these lost tombs may contain not only the remains of powerful pharaohs, but also hidden spiritual texts, ritual objects, and sacred knowledge that have yet to be fully revealed to the modern world. The Valley of the Kings, where many of Egypt's most famous rulers were buried, still holds the possibility of future discoveries that could change our understanding of Egyptian esotericism and spirituality. The discovery of the tomb of Tutankhamun in 1922 by Howard Carter sparked a wave of interest in Egyptology and fueled further explorations into the tombs of other pharaohs. Yet many other tombs have yet to be uncovered, and they may hold clues to the initiation rituals, sacred teachings, and cosmic knowledge that were central to the pharaoh's spiritual journey. The role of Egyptian mysticism in modern spiritual practices. While many of the ancient Egyptian rituals and spiritual teachings have been lost to time, their influence persists in modern-day spiritual and mystical practices. Ancient Egyptian wisdom has been integrated into occult traditions, alchemy, and even New Age spirituality. For example, the concept of spiritual transformation through the use of sacred geometry, ritual purification, and astronomical alignments continues to be a central tenet of modern mysticism. Modern mystics and occultists often look to Egypt as the source of the sacred knowledge that underpins many of today's spiritual practices. The symbols of ancient Egypt, such as the Eye of Horus, the Ankh, and the Scarab, continue to be used in modern esoteric systems, offering a direct link to the ancient wisdom of the pharaohs. The idea of spiritual ascension, as depicted in the journey of the pharaoh to the afterlife, remains an important aspect of contemporary mystical and occult traditions. The esoteric teachings and their modern application. Many modern spiritual seekers believe that the esoteric teachings of the pharaohs hold the key to unlocking deeper layers of consciousness and understanding the divine forces that govern the universe. The sacred knowledge encoded in Egyptian symbols, rituals, and texts offers practical insights into how we can achieve spiritual enlightenment and live in harmony with the cosmic order. For example, the pyramid's design, with its geometric proportions and alignment with the stars, is seen by some modern spiritual practitioners as a tool for achieving a higher state of awareness. The idea that the Great Pyramid was designed to channel cosmic energy and divine wisdom has inspired many who believe that by meditating on these sacred forms, one can unlock their own spiritual potential. Some modern occult schools even use the sacred geometry of the pyramids and temples as part of their teachings, seeing them as a means of connecting with the divine and understanding the deeper truths of the universe.